A warm welcome. Today you're in for an amazing experience. Not only are you going to be inspired by great color technique, but incredible words of wisdom from my very, very special guest, Candy Shaw. Many call her the Queen of Balayage and affectionately known as the Ballet Lama, but there's so much more to this wonderful lady. Anytime I've had the honor of talking to her, I come away so inspired by her words of wisdom, her experience in the industry, which obviously comes from the pedigree training that she's had, and also being the third generation of hairdressing, which is extraordinary to have a business that's now in its third generation, from Papa to the daughter and now on to the children. That's amazing. Candy Shaw is a mother, a wife. She's traveled the world. She's a manufacturer now, which is so exciting. She's an educator and, as I mentioned, highly successful with her salon, which is a 50-chair salon in gorgeous Atlanta. So without further ado, let's hear from this great lady. Let's dive into her mind. During today's show, we're going to be exploring so many different aspects of what it takes to be successful, what it takes to have longevity in our industry. And we're also going to be showing you some wonderful coloring techniques. And you know, I'm a baby colorist, so to be taught by the Queen of Balayage is pretty amazing. Tell us about how you got into this industry and the milestones along the way.
Well, I actually got into this industry by cutting hair in the locker room of my high school and trade for math homework. I was born with a learning disability, dyslexia, just like my father also had dyslexia. And for me, learning the gift of cutting kind of got me through just the entrepreneurial spirit of knowing that I could do something to try to get through something. And so I was taught by my father and my uncle. When I graduated high school, I moved to Europe and for about 6 months, and I trained with some amazing French hair cutters and learned a lot about balayage, came back. I never actually went to beauty school because of my learning disability. It was really funny for me. The one thing I feared the most in my life was my teachers, and now I have become one. Also, I never went to college, so I came back and really started my career immediately at the age of 18.
Wow.
And went on and became a hairstylist, and I've never looked back. It's the greatest career on earth.
So many people will say, well, if you're not successful academically, you can never be an entrepreneur, you can never be successful. We know that hairdressing's often had a stigma of, high school fallout sort of thing. What would you say to people about the difference between emotional intelligence and passion versus just having strong academic background?
Well, I love to tell the story about my two brothers. Both of them have academia on lock. Both of them have amazing degrees, PhDs, all these types of things. But then I laugh and I say, but they still borrow money from me. In a joking way, what I mean by that is I would say to anybody out there that don't let your disability define you. Let it empower you. And for me, it was that lifestyle that led me to here. It led me to being not only emotionally intelligent, but it gave me the sense of the street smarts. It caused me to learn things differently, and because I learn things differently, I think it's why I'm so full of grit and passion, and where it's led me to becoming a manufacturer, salon owner, and all the other things in between.
Wow, yeah. What is that grit?
Well, it's hard work mostly. My dad used to always tell me, you've got to work half a day every day, which really is 12 hours a day every day. And I work all the time, but I love what I do so much it doesn't feel like work to me. When I quit having fun doing it is when it's going to become a job. I always say the word job stands for just above broke. For me, it's a career. It's a beautiful place and space to live in. And I love what I'm doing. And wherever I put my focus is where I tend to love the most. So right now, my focus is on manufacturing, and that's kind of where my happy place is.
Yes. So what do you stand for when you look at your core values that you've been able to develop, and you look at the values that now you have within your team? And let's just remind everybody, you have a 50 chair salon. That is a huge space. How many square feet is that?
It's 5,000 square feet, 50 chairs, 50 years young, I like to say. And yes, it is a big space, and it takes a lot of people to fill up that big space. But I always say it's a portrait studio. You know, without the portrait artist, it's really just sticks and bricks and mirrors and chairs. So what I stand for is integrity. It's something that I've always put in the forefront. You know, hairdressing has changed a lot through the years. It's quite different now. The disciplines that we had growing up, of how we ran salons or we worked in a salon environment are quite different. So I would say the one word that I would stand for is integrity. If I tell you that I'm going to do something, I follow through, I do it, I'm just hardworking, but I think I would talk myself off with one word, and that's love. You know, everything I do, I always put love in it, and that's what's brought me here.
Yes, I love that. I love that you think that way. It's so beautiful, and it's very evident in everything that you do. When you look at the three qualities that that you currently own that have contributed to your success, what are they? And is there any advice you could give to youngsters about those qualities and how they could look for that too?
Well, I would say that I never compromise what I know is right and by my own standard. You know, I don't lower my standard in order to meet the room. If it really means a lot to me, I stay within that standard. I would say hard work is really my backbone. I mean, it's one thing that I never compromise either. Is the good old fashioned good days hard work. And I think that you have to be kind. You know, this industry is we have a license to touch. So we have a license to reach out and to really bring somebody to a beautiful place. You know, women mostly, which is what we work on, a lot of times suffer from just being loved. And so I would say, as a hairstylist, one of the reasons I love being behind the chair still, which a lot of people don't understand that I'm still behind the chair, is that I love to sell happiness and kindness, and that's really what my payback is.
So if Candy could look back, well, if the 17-year-old Candy or the 20-year-old Candy could look back and say, right, all that I know now, Candy, as you go forward, watch out for this. Like, what advice would you give to that real young Candy?
Well, I think on a personal level, what I would give the advice to that young Candy is to love myself physically. I always gave myself a hard time for the things that I didn't like about my personal body and physique. So I would say to that 20-year-old is to love yourself, number one. But I also would say to that 20-year-old Candy is to take the risk and fall. I think that when you're green, you will grow, and when you think you're ripe, you will rot. And of course, that wisdom now at the age of 57 is quite obvious to me. I would look back on her and just say, push the envelope. You know, be okay with failure. Be okay to fall. I think I was so afraid of failing because I was the next generation, and especially a female taking over in a male's world, a very male-dominant world when I was 20 years old. You know, helping my father manage the business, I would say just take more risk.
Candy, you speak about fear, and you speak about if the mature Candy could give advice to the young Candy, it would be about conquering fear. Speak more about that, because I think so many times in our career, we're frightened that we'll fail, so we don't do anything. We're frightened to try a new technique, so we don't do anything. And the consequences of not trying that new. If you could speak to that, because I think our youngsters, as well as our very experienced hairdressers, sometimes find that block, that fear barrier. They're not even aware that it's happening. They're just saying no to opportunity.
Well, if you think back about when I was 20 years old, there wasn't social media. And social media right now is a measurement of where you are in your career, both as successful your career as well as your home life or as what you were doing. But back when I was 20 years old, we didn't have that social media vehicle or outlet. So fear was something we dealt with just within the walls of the salons in which we worked. And I can remember going to shows, Vivienne, and watching these incredible masters on stage and thinking to myself, there's no way I could ever be that great. There's no way I could ever do that. There's no way I would ever be able to produce a show or to collaborate with a designer in that regard. But I found now that how I've overcome that fear is being able to go in and ask questions, to actually pick up the phone and to talk to the people that I really want to learn from. I was lucky enough to have a father as a mentor, and of course was lucky enough to be able to go to a lot of amazing places and see great people. I think that in order to overcome fear now, you must find a mentor, but you also must put away this social vehicle of the telephone, which tells you you can't, and really just trust your instincts. For me, it's always just been about trusting my gut and going for it. And also think about this too. When I was taking over a business from my father, my father would constantly tell me things like, well, I tried that before, it didn't work. Well, don't do that, because that doesn't work. And I finally had to say to my dad, look, what might not have worked for you back in 1978 might work again in 1998. So for me, I had to overcome the fear of even failing for my father and living up to the expectations of taking over a business. So that was something that I would say to anyone out there, or that is something I would say to anyone out there, is just know your capabilities are always bigger than you imagined. And just get out there and go for it. What do you have to lose?
So a couple of things. How do you balance the business side of what you do and the creative side?
How I balance business and creative is they really live in one. I surround myself with people that are smarter than I am. I know that I can't make all the decisions on my own. I like to think of my business as a perfect triangle. I work with my husband, who is the legal side of our business. He's an attorney by trade. My son, who is the millennial and the whippersnapper, the logistics, and just a totally different breath of air. And then my side, which is sort of that creative, the person who teaches, the person who leads through love and creativity and passion. Because I'm not book smart, so to speak, I learned to surround myself with people that can do that. So I really don't separate the two. When I'm thinking business, I'm still thinking creative.
I like that because so many times people think, oh, I'm being put in a box. And you're right, business is highly, highly creative, but it's a different way of solving a problem, isn't it? And I think that it's almost as though when you put that one hat on, there's the candy that's like, okay, focused on the numbers, and the numbers represent the behavior, and you're looking at it from there. And then there's the candy where, oh, let's now be creative and let's break the mold and try something new.